Yeah, g'day. All right. That was interesting, wasn't it? They were talking to Gus. He wants to talk to you about one other thing, so we'll probably do that tomorrow morning, before we get started tomorrow morning.
You'd like to, well...
You'd like to do it now.
Well, but he...
Well, that's how you feel in your spirit. It's like, let's get over and done with straight away.
There's a lot he'd like to say, I guess.
Yeah.
He can visit us anytime.
He can visit you anytime.
He can visit you. You know him now. You can ask for him to come and give you advice.
Yeah. Getting perspective is difficult, isn't it? All right. So remember yesterday we were talking about this, weren't we? The need for sincerity in everything we do, in particular, getting sincerity to the point where we take a sincere action. In the case of our discussion, we were talking about the sincere action being to pray. But to pray effectively, it has to be a sincere longing. So you have to go through all of this to basically get sincere. And you can see that illustrated in Gus's life, right? He had to go through, he realised at the beginning there was a desire for ignorance, desire for arrogance, desire for judgment, desire for control, desire for power, all these desires which were his sincere desires. And then he had to work through, well, do I want to accept that these desires are actually wrong? So this is the thing I'd like to now talk to you about in terms of how to build a sincere desire when you're in a state where you're sincerely desiring error, sincerely desiring sin. And you can see that if I sincerely desire sin, then from God's perspective, I am not sincere. Right? So when I have a strong desire for arrogance, power, control, and all of those other things we mentioned yesterday, and of course we could make a much longer list of all of those things, couldn't we? And also, remember with the discussion with Gus too, he even added further things to that list, didn't he, really, in terms of that are going to be a part of the USA psyche, shall we call it that, the things that you've been brought up to believe. And developing a sincere desire to even work through where you're insincere requires quite a lot of desire in itself, to even contemplate doing that. So the thing that we'd like to talk about a bit now is this whole concept that how do I move from what I think are sincere desires, but are actually from God's perspective insincere desires? How do I move from that to a place where from God's perspective I actually have a sincere desire? Does that make sense? So how do I move from one to the other? Because if I can't move from a place of my own insincerity, where I'm sincerely interested in all the things opposing God, you could say, or opposing God's love, if I can't move from there to the point where I'm sincerely desiring, the things that are going to bring me closer to God, then of course every time you pray it's going to be completely ineffective. Right? So unless we address that, we're just going to try praying and we're not going to receive anything. So let's look at sort of addressing that to a degree. Now, the conversation I'm going to have with you now is not exhaustive, so don't assume that this is the full amount of the truth about these matters. But it is hopefully going to help you see what kind of decisions you are going to have to make, and also where you're going to make them. Now, when I say where, I don't mean where on the planet. I mean where, like in what situation are you going to make these decisions, right? So what I want to do first is sort of look at the decisions that you'll need to make in order to become sincere, and then look at where that happens inside of you, where these decisions are made in terms of inside of your organism, your soul, where these decisions are made. So let's firstly look at some of the decisions. So you're starting in a point, and I might just draw that. You're starting at a place of error. Now this is error from God's perspective, right? But unfortunately, in your own psyche, your own feelings right now, you feel you're in a state of truth. This is a personal perspective. God knows you're in error, but you know you're in truth. And when I say you know, it's an utter conviction that you are in truth. Does that make sense to you? So there's the error that God sees you in, and you're seeing exactly the same things as God's seeing, and yet seeing them as truth rather than error. And here I'm talking about your personal truth in particular. So your personal truth is generally expressed in a number of different ways. Firstly, it's expressed towards yourself. So in other words, you know the truth about yourself, you think. You follow? So the truth about me, I know it, is the general feeling we have. Then there's also the truth about others. I think I know that too, right? And then there's the truth about society in general, and that includes all of society in every form. So that means society economically, society religion, society medical profession, society
education.
Oh, no, it goes right. Education. Family. Children. Parents. Everything about society we often believe, by the time we're a grown adult, we often believe we know the truth about all those things. We're pretty clever, eh? We think we're clever. That's the perspective we have. So we're seeing, firstly, we're coming from a place where we're saying, I know the truth about myself. I know I'm a good person. Yeah? I know that I'm pretty clever, really. I know that my assessment of everything that I see around me is pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Right? I know that those people who voted in Trump, they're silly people. Or I know that those people who voted in who was before Trump, Biden, they're pretty silly people. I know that. It's my perspective, but I believe it's true. In fact, it's very unlikely that you will hold on to something unless you believe it's true. If you believed it was false, why would you hold on to it? There'd be no point to it. It would be working against your own organism, your own soul feelings, to hold on to something that you feel is false. Right? So substantially, we're all starting from a place where we feel that we are in a state of truth. That's where we're starting. And this is the difficulty. From God's perspective, almost everything we think, feel, sexually desire, everything we desire materially, everything we desire emotionally, most of our beliefs are all in error. That's how a society gets to a hellish state, by all of its citizens actually believing in error. You know, in the spirit world, the reason why, you know, when you get to the seventh sphere of the spirit world, before you transition into at one with God, the reason why the people living there are there is because they all fundamentally agree on the same condition of love, which also happens to be in agreement with God's condition. You understand? So the only way society can get into a hellish condition is for pretty much all of the participants in society having a hellish condition of their own. Mm-hmm. And yet, the majority of us don't believe that about ourselves. Does that make sense? And so it's very hard for us in that state where we don't believe what is actually true from God's perspective It's very hard for us in this state where we believe we know the truth, but from God's perspective it's an error for us to see God's perspective. It's very, very difficult. And in fact, for the majority of people, impossible while they're on earth. And it's only after they pass, as has been the case in Gus's example, it's only when they pass that they go, I'm in a really bad place here. I had comfort when I was on earth. I don't have comfort here. I had, nice running water that was clean on earth. I don't have that here. I had nice smelling food. Now I'm eating scraps. I had a nice environment. Now it's just a bunch of ruins. I had nice company, what you thought might have been nice company or agreeable company. And now every single person I'm with is like me. And I thought that was good, but when I see myself reflected in the other people who are with me, I'm starting to go, maybe that's not so good either. But why am I here? I don't deserve to be here. Right? And this is how the majority of people respond when Mary and I try to share personal truth with them. They feel, what's wrong with you? You must have a very bad opinion of me. You must not know me very well at all. Don't you see all these lovely things that I am? Right? And the reason why most people respond this way is because each person within themselves is convinced that their version of the truth about themselves in every way, so it's the truth about themselves from a physical perspective, and you could also say, because not just all your senses are physical, from a sensory perspective. In other words, what you see is the truth, is what you think. You think what you see is the truth, what you hear is the truth, what you in terms of what you taste is the truth. And this is something that most people are not aware of, but actually what you're tasting even in your diets here in America is greatly diluted from the truth. Even in that regard, you compare what God created and then compare what humans have done with that. A lot of your gear is laced with sugar, palm oil, and all these other things which are bad for you. But the average person goes, these are all good for me. I like them. They are great. This is great that our society has, common things here. I don't know what they are because we don't do research in that regard.
Twinkies?
Twinkies?
I just know that from the movies. I don't even know what that is.
But we think it's the truth. They taste really good, right? Whatever it is. So there's a sensory apparatus that is in a body that's already been detuned by our sin into a certain path. You understand? This also occurs emotionally with your sexual behaviour. You're normalised. It's normalised. Whatever you do, you believe is righteous. And for one person that might mean having 10 partners a year. For another person that might mean having one night stands all the time. For another person that might mean, I'm married and I've got to stay married. Whatever the belief is, it's normalised in the surroundings. All the people you get along with generally agree with you in one way or another. And then there's, of course, the thing driving all this, which is your spiritual beliefs. Your spiritual beliefs. Of course, all of these things are beliefs. All of them are, actually. So, when you believe when you get a tin of tomato soup, that it's actually the real tomatoes you're getting, right? You believe that. But actually, if you got a whole heap of tomatoes and vitamised them up in a mixer and then compared that with the thing you're getting from the shop, you would understand, actually, there's no similarity between what you're getting tomato soup and what God created to be tomato soup. Do you understand? Just a simple analogy like that, you can see there's a huge difference. But we come to train ourselves through society, through our engagement with it, and the environment we're engaging with. We come to believe that in every single area of my life, every single facet of my life, I know the truth. So that means that if the whole society and your family believes that not feeling emotions is a bad thing, then you're going to feel it's a bad thing, right? If the whole of your company, the area that is your most closest associates, believe that Christianity is true, then you're going to believe for a while at least that it's true, right? If you all have an attitude towards God that God is a punishing God in this society, and you've had punishing parents, then it's highly likely you'll believe God is a punishing God. I know the truth about that. If God exists at all, he's definitely a punishing God. And so it goes with every definition that's within. Every single one. And your perspective, frequently, while it may be completely in error from God's perspective, your perspective inside of yourself is firmly established as the truth of your life. And when I say firmly, it's like a concrete block established within you. Most people see it as almost unmovable, right? There is a common concept on earth, isn't there, that you can't really change fundamentally. Most people believe that on earth. Whatever you happen in your childhood, and also your personality defines who you are, and you can't really do anything about it. Your character or anything, that's all predetermined. That's what the majority of people believe, because it is difficult to change. And so the average person measures the fact that everyone around them never seems to change, so it must be impossible to. For me as well, right? So these are all truths, and it's not just the truths of your current state either. It's also the truth with regard to your desires in these areas. So frequently, your current state is driven, the future of your current state is driven by the desires that are impressed upon your current state. So this is how you sort of make a little decision. So when you're a teenager, for example, you decide, I need to experience sex. So what I'm going to do is find a person I can have sex with. So you do that once, and then you like the experience, and if you liked it, you'll want to do it again and again and again, potentially, if without any consideration of whether what you're doing is morally sound. Because your prior condition will determine your desires will then feed back into your prior condition and create a new condition, which often then degrades. This is how people end up becoming violent and becoming destructive, sexually violent, emotionally violent, and then physically violent. This is how it happens, because they don't start off that way. They just slowly degrade through what are often thought to be minor decisions, little decision points. So this is the point that I want to raise with you. We got to this state through little decision points that were made all the way along our life. Decisions that we found, we agreed with, and we examined, and we then went further down the decision road until such a point that now we are where we are right now. The decisions led us there, right? And this, from God's perspective, the majority of this, while you believe it's true, is actually error. So what do we do? Can you see the conundrum? Is that your perspective is that you're in place of truth already. So can you see, how are you ever going to have a desire that gets you out of your current place if you believe your current place is already good? Can you see it's almost impossible to develop a desire if you believe your current place is good? And this is why most people never change on earth, and they wait to the spirit world. Because when they hit the spirit world, the environment reflects to them that their current place isn't good. And now they must start to contemplate the potential of that being because it's within them. The problem begins within them. It causes them to eventually contemplate that reality. Now, it took for Gus, who we were just talking to, 80 years to contemplate that reality. 80 years in the spirit world. He never contemplated it on earth. And it took him 80 more years after passing. So
nearly his whole lifetime again.
Yep. More than his whole lifetime again, actually. I think he said he died in his 70s, didn't he? And it took him more than his lifetime again to contemplate that maybe he was in error. And this is not uncommon. This is a very common thing. The average person only contemplates their own personal position when forced to by the environment. And unfortunately for many people here in the United States, this is exactly what's going to happen in your future. Many of you, even many of you here, are going to not contemplate your current condition until there's a change in your environment, because there's so much solidity saying, I don't want to, I think I'm right already, right? And this is a very big thing to address within yourself personally. We think what we desire and we think what our condition is already in harmony with happiness, or already in harmony with truth.
Well, and can we relate what you've written there, Jesus, to this? This here is really our history that is undealt with.
Yeah, should we call it what the Paget messages call it? These things are our memories.
And they are actually driving our faith, which is our desires for the future.
Does that make sense? So when we say memories, you have memories of your physical life and your sensory life. So, that's kind of memories. I put my finger on a hot stove and I got burnt. I remember that, so I don't do that again.
Or even more extreme, people who've been sexually abused. Sexual arousal was in the context of harm or power control. So
another example.
That's a sensory experience that I'm carrying.
Then you've got things like emotion that comes up, like under certain circumstances I was punished by my parents and other circumstances I wasn't. That's now a memory emotionally. Does that make sense to you? All of these are memories, but they are all in different areas or facets of your life. And these memories all contain a combination of all of these things, these facets of you, your soul. Remember, your soul has a spiritual nature, a sexual one, an emotional one, a sensory one, and a physical nature too. Even your soul has that. And so you've got all of these areas of your life where you're recording memories, like a big computer system recording all of your memories, right?
And then you could say, couldn't you, that those memories I then define as reality. So another word for truth is what is real. My memories tell me what is real.
Does that make sense to you? And so once my memories tell me what is real, what else can tell me what is real? Not much at all, really, is there? Now, once I have my memories defining what is real, then I'm going to use my desires to act upon those memories as well.
Because that's what I have faith in.
Yeah.
This is reality, so I have faith that will continue to be reality, so I must act in harmony with what my memories tell me. That works really well with hot stoves, doesn't it? It does.
Or with learning how to walk.
That's a good feature. But what happens is, because there's so much sin on the planet, we don't deal with the pain, and pain begins to define our reality. Stored pain begins to define what we say is true and real and right. Yeah.
So we could use another word that Mary just used there. Our truth is our reality. What we feel is real, right? So God is a nasty fellow. That's what I feel is real. I also believe that women are there to meet my addictions. That's what I feel is real. Men are there to help me with my safety and security. That's what I feel is real.
And we define love through these memories. We define truth through these memories. We define what's moral and right through those memories.
And yet all of it's
false. Was all tainted by the sin.
Yeah. So, what do we do? Is the question, isn't it? Like, what decisions are we going to have to make for anything here to change? And these decisions, can you see, because these are all the facets of our soul, these are all the things involved in our soul, desires are also a part of our soul. Can you see, I'm going to have to make these decisions in every way, in every aspect of my soul, not just in an intellectual manner, which many of you have already attempted to do, right? So many of you have already attempted to make an intellectual change on an issue and found it very, very difficult, right? Because you keep reverting back to the same behaviour. And the reason why is all your memories are stored in your soul, not in your mind. Does that make sense to you? So remember I said earlier, just in the beginning of this conversation, where am I going to have to make changes? I'm going to have to make the changes in my soul, which means that I'm going to have to make changes in my spiritual, sexual, emotional, sensory and physical life. In every aspect of my life. It's going to be whole of me that I'm going to have to make some changes. I can't expect to just make an intellectual switch and then everything else naturally follows.
Yeah, and I can't just make a physical change without integrating it with all of these other aspects of myself, which makes good sense, doesn't it? Because you want to have everything harmonious with each other. And when we try to have intellectual change or intellectual development, we're really having to shut down a lot of these areas of our life in order to make just a purely physical change. Oh, I'm not going to project at men anymore. I'm not going to. I have to detach from my memories in all these other areas in order to do that.
I'm not going to hurt my children anymore. I've got to detach from all of my desires in all the other areas to hurt my children in order to intellectually do it. But the trouble is, by detaching, I'm probably going to finish up doing it more than I realise.
It's not sustainable.
Because it's not sustainable, and it also doesn't work. So in the end, the whole concept that your mind is going to be very, very effective in helping you on this process is very flawed, because your mind belongs in your spirit form rather than your soul, and the soul's mind includes these things. The sensory part of you, the emotional part of you, the sexual part of you, and the spiritual parts of you are your soul's mind. It's the way your soul thinks. You could say it like that, right? So where am I going to have to make changes is where my soul thinks. That's where I'm going to have to make the changes, right? Now, God gave you the mind, and the mind's like a hammer. It can be used like a tool. It is a tool that God gave you to work things out. An example of that is you can use your mind to measure what you think is truth and ask yourself, if everybody believed what I believed, what would the world be like? You can use your mind to ponder that question and go, oh yeah, if everybody used the amount of resources I use, we'd need 10 worlds to supply us for the resources. That's why people are thinking going to Mars, right? Get some more resources from somewhere else, because here we're depleting them. Eventually I'm going to need resources from somewhere else, right? But our mind would be able to go, well, obviously if I'm using these resources, and it's well documented actually, that if every person used the same amount of resources that Americans use, just generally, there'd need to be 10 worlds to supply the resources, right? And that's with the current population. God designed the earth to supply enough resources for 60 billion people or more to live here at any one point in time. That's 11 times the current population. And yet, if everyone lived like you guys live, and like people in Australia live and people in Western society lives, we would need 10 times the world we currently have. In other words, the way you're living will only support 800 million people on Earth. It's a fact, but it's a fact most people living in their truth don't even want to recognise. You understand? Because we think, but like my stuff, and I like my things, and I like my aircon and my automatic hand taps, and I like my automatic car, and the fact that I can even now drive my car hands-free, isn't that fantastic? And we like all of these things that we're utilising in our addiction, which is actually what we think is our truth. We like it all, and so we go, well, we don't want to give all that up. We don't want to even make a change with regard to that. Let's do it more rather than do it less. Does that make sense? So here I'm going to be faced with a number of decisions. I'm going to be faced with a decision. This is the part of this is my soul, and this collectively can be referred to as my soul's memories. You can also say it's your soul condition, which is the exact terminology that we used in the Paget messages. Your soul condition. Your soul condition is a set of your desires and passions and longings and aspirations, all connected to these parts of you, which are all built in as your soul's attributes. And all of those things combine to create what you perceive you to be, your experience of the world and your experience of yourself. And yet, most of it is in harmony with what we think is real, but actually from God's perspective, it is completely unreal. So when people say things to you like, we're really looking after our environment because we've got lots of natural things in our environment still, and then you ask God's perspective of whether you're looking after your environment, you will find there's a huge disparity between what you perceive as real and what God created to be real. And then you can even ask God, like, what is a picture of what it could be like? Or what was it like before humans, or before particularly Western humans, people from England and France and so forth, come to this country? What was it like then? You can ask those kind of questions, and even the spirits who are here then can tell you what it was like. And then you start to see, what I think is real is actually a very destroyed environment based upon what I think is true, not upon reality. That makes sense? And it's the same in every aspect of your life, not just with the environment, because remember that that's to do with society, but it's also how others think and feel, and it's also how I feel, think and act as well in all of these areas. So the question becomes, and maybe before we ask the question, is there any questions you have about this state before I proceed in trying to deconstruct it? Yeah? So, Mary, down the front here.
I'm not sure who asked the question back here, but is that why earlier you were explaining that there's something inside of us that pulls us towards, say, our hatred for Trump? And because there's things inside of us that, that's similar, but we're pushing away from it?
Yeah, an example of that, Mary, is, let's say you have a feeling inside you that you would like a man to protect you. You understand? So that's a feeling most women here in the USA have. If you haven't got a man to protect you against other men, then you're alone as a woman and you could be raped or hurt or violently abused, right? So the feeling is, well, I would like to at least have a man come along who's going to protect me. So I want a man who is willing to protect me. What kind of a man who's going to protect you to the point where you are safe, you feel safe?
So far, I've not been satisfied, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, but you can see straight away that he's going to probably have to, at some point, become a violent man. He's going to have a very strong opinion of himself, isn't he? He's going to have to feel he's better than other men. And you're going to have to also give him the belief that he is. in order for him to do it. And you're probably also going to have to give him sex in order to have him do it, right? So you're going to have to give to him sexually and look up to him in that regard as well. And then there's also other things that he might have to do in order for you. So he might have to be a provider. He might have to say, we're going to do what's good for my family, not for anybody else's family, but just mine. So he's going to have to do all of that for you, right? There's Trump. That man's Trump. Now, you're not thinking that man's Trump, but he's got all of those emotions in him, all of those emotions I just described, right? It's Trump you're longing for. You understand? And I know that sounds funny, but it's true, unfortunately, right? And because of the addictions we have, we don't realise that actually these people can only reach positions of power by the majority of people on earth, whether it doesn't matter what their political bent, but the majority of people in the USA, no matter what their political bent, has to have some of these feelings in order to vote a person in like this. Like if you look at some of your prior presidents, all of them to some degree exhibit this protect me attitude. Mm-hmm. They're going to protect me. This is what gets many people to vote for them. You understand? We're going to go to war with the people who are going to destroy America. We're going to go to war with the people who have bad intentions towards America. We're going to go to war with the people who are going to not provide us with food or at the appropriate price. You know, get the resources from them in the price that we think we should pay.
It's also, we're going to protect your right to bear arms. It's also why women haven't been elected in this country.
Yeah.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So would it, because I have had that issue with fellow friends, so would it be less so about me and what I see in myself pertaining to Trump and more so about a man, or would it be both?
Well, it's about your feelings of what you want from him, what your addictions are with men, you understand? So this is where, remember Gus was saying, you've got to start from within yourself. So, okay, when I start looking at that, I'm going, okay, even though I might be annoyed with him, right, there are things about him that I actually like. Like, many of you actually like that he's more seemingly honest than the average politician. That's what you tell yourselves, right? He's outspoken in his opinions, and at least he has them instead of hiding them. So that's one of the things you want as well. A man who's going to be outspoken and straightforward with what he says, right? For some of you don't like that. Some of you have the opposite feeling to that. But every single thing you don't like, as well as every single thing you do like, happens to be in error, mostly. Because it's been defined by your memories and your experience of other people's error as well. It's all entered you as well. And so, from God's perspective, there are so many things that you want a man to be that are actually completely in error from God's perspective. Make sense?
That was hard to hear, but thank you.
And a lot of times, many of you are looking for an imaginary partner, right, that meets all of these errors that you define as true. Then you'll have the perfect soulmate. You understand?
And this is what Samuel was also talking about. He was saying that in a lot of cases, say if we use the Trump example, a lot of you really dislike him, but he was saying that a lot of things that you actually, as Jesus just pointed out, you long for are in him. So even if you don't long for Trump, you are supporting the values that got him elected.
If he had a different personality, you probably would have voted for him.
Totally. If he had certain slight differences, then you would have voted for him because there are elements in him that you want. And this is why he said you see through a glass darkly, because until you deal with your personal sin, you won't see, okay, what is a good leader? Because at the moment, you just want a leader with a different facade, but essentially a lot of the same motivations. But when you deal with your personal sin, you won't want any facade, and you won't want anyone who's just going to make promises to alleviate your fear either, whether it's your partner or your leader or your worker. So if you're a man,
Or your children, because
Yeah.
many of you try to do that. You try to turn your children into the thing that you desperately want them to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Make sense, Mary? Just straight behind you to Courtney. And if we can bring the other mic down to here, thanks.
I was just reflecting at that, like for me, and this might be wrong, but it feels like as an audience, or I'm not as emotional like the last couple of days and on this topic as others, and it sort of feels like as an audience we're not that emotionally.
Well, to be honest with you there as well, is that if you're measuring everything based on the emotion you feel,
Okay.
you're already, remember the emotion you feel is also an error for the most part. Remember, this is, the whole of you includes your emotions. And so just because some of you feel emotional about one thing and the other people don't, and then some of you don't feel emotional about one other thing and then others of you do, it doesn't guarantee that any of you are in truth at all. Do you understand?
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So because you're not going to be in God's truth anyway, because you're starting from a position that all of your emotions probably and all of your senses and all of your sexual and spiritual behaviour is all tainted in some way or another.
Okay.
Makes sense, Courtney?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
This is where comparisons are sort of useless. When you see other people having a cry about something, well, a lot of times they're crying in the same tantrum that you would be crying about a different thing.
So it's not always an indicator of
No,
things.
not at all.
Yeah. Okay.
Not at all. And the people who believe it don't understand God's truth. How emotional you are is not necessarily an indicator that you understand any truth. You can be so angry and emotional all the time and still understand none of God's truth. You can be crying all the time and understand none of God's truth. In fact, many people who are crying in their tears of pain and suffering still are in a place of tantrum because they don't understand God's truth and they don't want to know what the truth is that would cause them to be happy. Right?
This is why the longing for truth is so essential to your progression, in whatever progression you have,
Yep.
And a lot of people cry to reinforce their false belief.
The cries we often have emotionally are a protest that our beliefs have to be changed. And most of us are just crying in the protest. Those of us who are crying, and some of us are not even crying yet about the protest. We're just in our denial of that. But same problem, really. Can you see?
Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So straight,
And
we're over here
yeah.
first. Where were we?
Jordan,
Yes.
yeah.
And then over here. Yep.
So coming from a place of error and having those memories in the soul condition, and based off the diagram from yesterday, that development of sincerity or sincere ignorance is also like taking the action based off of the aspiration?
Well, yeah, the question really becomes is how do I change this, isn't it? That's
Yes.
really the question you're asking. And this is what I want to flesh out a bit for you in the coming discussion.
Can you see, though, that sincere ignorance would entail calling into question all
Every
of this
memory.
as real?
Okay.
You would have to reach a state, wouldn't you, where you'd say, okay, I'm holding all these memories. Are they real? Or are they just
Are they God's reality?
memories?
They're my reality, but are they God's?
And then on that, the acceptance that they're not emotionally from that perspective to
Not just
release it?
emotionally, sensorially, spiritually, sexually. You're going to have to accept it in every facet of your soul, not just emotionally. Emotionally is one facet of your soul. You're going to have to accept it in your belief systems. You're going to have to accept it in your emotions. You're going to have to look at even the way you use your senses and to examine truths and things like that. And your sexual behaviour, you're going to have to look at everything. It's not, you know, remember Gus was saying he still hasn't finished looking at his sexual behaviour towards women, right? Even though he's now obviously cleared away a lot of his damage in it, but there's still other things that he needs to do before he can even meet his other half, right? So he's had to work on everything, not just one thing, everything.
I guess I stick on the sensory and emotion part because of what I feel when I attempt to tackle that.
What do you mean by that?
Just the overwhelming feeling coming over of just what happens, whether it be nervousness or fear.
Yeah.
If
you think of your senses, there are three facets to your senses even. There's your physical body that has senses, there's your spiritual body that has senses, and then your soul has senses as well. And every one of those senses, I'll give you an example of that. In your physical body, when you look using your eyes at somebody who's angry, you can see they're angry because of why? Your eyes are seeing they're usually a bit heated, they're raving on. So if you just closed your ears in every other sense, you would still probably be able to see the person's angry, right? Yeah. But let's say now you open your ears as well, what are you going to hear?
The words.
You're going to hear the words, they're swearing, they're carrying on about something, aren't you? That's all going to be a part. That's all sensory inputs coming into your soul, assessing that situation. Does that make sense? From your physical senses. But your soul can actually sense and has the ability to sense when somebody's angry when they don't do any of those things. Do you understand?
Yeah.
You have senses in your soul that are able to determine, oh, that person's angry, that person isn't, that person is, that person isn't, before you even see or before they even exhibit any physical symptoms of such rage. So that's what I mean by senses. Your senses are going to be in all aspects of you, not just in your physical body, but also in your spirit body and your soul. You're going to be able to see and feel things. Then your feelings and thoughts are not just what you exhibit physically. In fact, the majority of you don't show your true emotional feelings at all. In fact, for many of you, they're so shut down, they're like shriveled, like nuts that have been dried. Or you could think of it like, you know, imagine a peach or an apricot and it's been dried in the sun for a few years and there's no water left in it. And if we compare water to truth, there's no truth left in it either. Does that make sense? Because all the truth, the only truth that can save it is not the truth that comes from within you. It's going to have to be a truth that comes from outside of you. Does that make sense to you? Because all the truth that's in you is all dried up and gone. You follow? And this is a place where most people are. It's like, don't think that just because you think you know the truth, that that's actually reality. Actual reality is, from God's perspective, in the most people's soul on earth, and this is why most people arrive in the hells of the spirit world. From God's perspective, most people's soul on earth have no truth or hardly any truth at all. There's little smidges of it, but it's so shrunken and dried up and devoid of God's truth that it's like a dried apricot sitting in the sun for years and years and years and ending up. Have you ever tried to eat one?
Leathery.
It's like you can't even get your teeth into it anymore. And for many of you, that's what it's going to be like emotionally. You can't even get your teeth into your own emotions because there's no truth in the soul yet. Do you follow? And the truth has to come. It's not going to come from in your soul because there's none there. It's not going to come. This whole idea, I'm inspired by my soul to do things. It's a load of crap. You're not going to be inspired by anything unless it's outside of you. You follow? Because there's not enough inside of you to inspire you to do it anyway. You're going to need some kind of help from outside. So this is something that Gus started to realise. Once he had his tantrum, of course, he started to realise that I need help from outside of me. Somebody who's going to come along and at least explain to me some of the things that are real, God's truth, that I can see, and also some of the things that are not real but I think are real inside of me. They're going to have to be explained to me because I am hopeless pretty much at determining what those things are. The big fault most people have on the earth is that we don't think we're hopeless about determining what the truth is. We think our memories determine the truth, and that is fact. That makes sense to you? And unless I have a feeling inside of me that says, I am like a shriveled prune when it comes to the truth being in me, and the water that's all now dried out of me is the truth that's all gone from me over the course of my life for whatever reason, you don't even have to judge it, to be honest. You just need to know it. And then once you know that that's true, you can go, right, I'm going to need a source of truth that's outside of myself in order to change. I'm not going to change from what I think, from what I work out, because you're incapable of working out in that state what the truth is. You're incapable of working it out. There's a Paget message that says, all help comes from outside oneself. There's many messages that say a source of water is where things have to come from, and the effect of the water, the flow of the river can never flow higher than its source. Now, if the source is you, which it mostly is here, can you see? If the source is me, and I am in a state where I think everything I know is truth and I think everything outside of what I know isn't, and that's the source, how am I going to change while I continue with the concept that the source of truth is me? My soul is the source of truth. Absolute rubbish. It cannot be, because it's going to be limited to wherever I am. And if I want to exceed where I am, I'm going to have to connect to a source of truth that's higher than myself. Make sense?
Otherwise, I'm a closed system, aren't I?
You're closed.
I'm here in my, you could call it the chains of my memories, defining the truth. And unless there's some opening to something higher
external
than myself,
to me,
it's outside of my system, how can I find the real reality?
So while I'm in this sort of arrogant state that says, I know the truth, I know the truth, I know the truth, I'm really in the state where I'm saying, I am the source of truth.
Mm-hmm. So you can see why Jesus' diagram, at the start of sincerity, we start with sincere ignorance, which is saying, I don't know the truth.
I know stuff all. Right? In fact, it's worse than that. Everything that I already think I know is probably wrong too. And it's not what I know in my mind. It's every single thing that I sexually have experienced, every single emotion I've ever had, every single belief I hold on to, every single thing is likely in error. Now, you may occasionally be surprised and find that one of them's true.
That's what.
And that'll be great. That means you don't have to work on that.
That's right. That's what this process gives you. You get to, now that everything's on the table, is it true or not? Now you get to find the truth.
Because remember, you can't sincerely desire truth unless you realise that you don't have any.
Or at least you have to say, maybe everything I believe is not true. I need to seek truth. And then, oh, that one tiny little thing, I got that right. But everything else was an error.
Yeah.
No wonder I'm unhappy.
Yeah. So this is, if we look back at here, you can see one of the biggest problems we face is our own conviction about our own state. In other words, the delusion we have that everything's fine within me, and anything that's painful in the world has to be the result of something else other than me. That's the delusion, right? The irony also is that whenever you do actually become happy, you can find you can be completely happy in a completely unhappy world. That's also possible. Because you now are in harmony with truth rather than what God views as error. Now you're in harmony with God's truth. If you're in harmony with God's truth, now all of the laws are combining to help your life so you can be happy. And it doesn't really matter what men make as laws or what men believe is fact or true. You're living in a completely different state where you know all these things aren't. Not because you relied on your own source of information, but because you relied on God to be, or somebody who was more developed than yourself to be, in a better condition of truth than you are. Does that make sense? You have to, in the spirit world, every single person who ever progresses comes to the point of trusting someone outside of themselves. Fundamentally, when you're in this state, the only person you trust is yourself. So we end up with a society that's basically going, I can only trust myself. Mary feels she can only trust herself. All of you here believe you can only trust yourselves. And your version of truth is accurate, and my version of truth is accurate to me, and Mary's version of truth is accurate to her. Are we ever going to reach agreement on any issue whatsoever? It'll be like chance, won't it, that determines whether we will or not. It won't be fact that determines. It'll be chance. It'll be like, oh, in this particular way we agree. Wow.
We should get married.
We should, yeah. I agree a woman should cook and clean for me, and Mary does too. Let's get married. That's fantastic. Right? Not asking myself whether any of that is in error, because we both believe it's true. And fundamentally who you end up associating with in the world is all the people who agree with you. And of course that's not many. That's why many of us don't have many friends. Because there's not many people that actually agree with everything, all of your memories. You know, to agree with all of your memories, they're going to have a compatible experience with you. That doesn't mean they have to have the same experience. They just have to have a codependent experience with you. Right? So if I agree that I'm not worthy and he agrees, the other guy agrees that I'm less than him, I will look up to him and I will aspire to be like him, and that will cause us to be friends. It doesn't mean we are, of course, because he's abusing me and I'm letting myself be abused, but that's okay to me and it's okay to him. Because we're all living in the state of untruth, and we've got compatibility to allow for that state to continue. That makes sense? So I could have a lowly feeling of myself and someone else can have an arrogant feeling about themselves, and we can be friends. That's compatible. But if I'm arrogant and another guy's arrogant, that's more incompatible, isn't it? Unless we have compatible desires. Like, I want to kill people, he does too, so let's go off and do it. That kind of thing. I want to rape women, he does too, so let's go off and do that. That kind of feeling. Right? As long as our desires are compatible, we think we're great friends. You know, it could be just drinking. Like, I like drinking, he does too, so we're great friends. We have drinking buddies, you know. I like, who's your current team? Who's your team here? The North Carolinian... What are they called?
Tar Heels.
Wow, that's hard. Tar Heels? T-A-R-H-W-L.
Are these American footy club? Or,
We've got no idea.
or is...
The college team. It's a college town.
Oh, it's a college town. Yeah. I mean, in North Carolina, do you have a team in the AFL? The Panthers. Okay, let's say. I'm a Panther supporter. He's a Panther supporter. We're great mates. He's not a Panther supporter.
Oh.
Oh. Arguments, fights. You know, my daughter, she's a Panther supporter, but then she gets married to a guy who doesn't support the Panthers. My God, what a disaster. That kind of thing, right? And this is I'm making fun, but it's just a physical thing, obviously, but we have this in more powerful areas in our emotional, spiritual, and also our sensory and sexual areas of our life. Yeah? So here we are, we have all of these things that we believe are true, and it takes a very self-reflective person to go, maybe everything, almost everything I believe is true is not. from God's perspective, not. That requires a lot of self-reflection to do even that. Even to ask yourself that question is hard enough. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, as was asked earlier, what do I do about it? What do I do about the fact that I want to stay in this idea or concept of myself?
And reality.
My reality. What can I do to break through my reality? Now, remember I just said earlier, the only way you're going to break through your reality is to get truth from a source outside of you. So you've got to stop listening to yourself. Do you understand? You've got to stop listening to all those emotions that scream at you, the feelings, the sexual feelings and beliefs that scream at you, saying you know what is right and you're going for it. You've got to stop listening to all of that. That's one of the things that must be done, because you are never going to change very much from your own perspective, because there's no source of truth outside of yourself if you keep thinking that you're the source of truth. Right? Now, the beauty of truth is that there is a source that actually knows what is true, actually true, reality true. God. There's a source. And then anybody who has connected to God in a real way, as God defines that way to be, is also going to be a source of truth, potentially. Right? But God is the only definite, unchangeable source of truth. Right?
Reliable.
Yep, reliable. Yep. So,
microphone at the back.
Microphone up the back.
Oh, yeah. We didn't get the
Oh, I didn't
question
get to. Where was I here?
Yeah. Good, let's do this one and
Aaron?
then come back. Yeah.
Do you want to ask your question? Or have I gone too far now for it to be done?
Let me see. I think I should pass it on.
No worries. Let's
Yeah.
pass it. I'm sorry about that. Yep. You get so involved in conversation, you go, oh, where was I before now? Yeah.
Thanks for this. What if I know for sure my beliefs about God are false.
Yep.
So when I go to ask to trust God, there's a feeling in me that, well, God's not really trustworthy, even though intellectually I'd be like, of course God's trustworthy and he's the source,
Yep.
or she's the source. But there's that error inside that blocks the source to flow in, and then there's no place to go, it feels like, except just feel the pain of having
Well, is there
that
anybody
belief.
else you're not blocked to?
Exactly, everybody. So if there's a block to God, that would be the case.
Not necessarily. You can be unblocked to people rather than and just have an issue with God. Every person in the sixth sphere is in that state.
Okay.
You understand? So you
Yeah.
can still progress even if you're blocked to God.
Okay, well, I trust some of the stuff that you're saying about God.
Some of the stuff.
Yeah, some of the stuff.
Some of the stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
emotionally I'm talking about. Like intellectually I'd say, yeah, sure, I believe that. But then when I get to feeling an emotion,
This is very-
that actually isn't the case, and that's
Correct.
what I gotta feel through, or come to feel that there's
Yeah.
a block there, at least to that degree. Like there's
And
a block.
I'm telling you, the only way through that block is to actually go through the emotion,
Yeah.
and you don't want to do it because you don't believe that's true.
Yeah.
If you believed that was true, you would have already done it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you obviously don't want to do it. So you've got somebody who you think you respect enough to listen to, but still not listening to him. Do you understand?
Not totally, because I'm not at one with God. So that
No,
would be-
it's not about that.
No.
It's not about, you don't trust me yet. So you don't trust God or me yet.
Okay.
You understand? because I'm telling you to do something that you don't want to do.
Your faith is that that's not a good thing to do.
Like, for instance, fear of violence.
Yeah, that's an
Actually
example.
feeling that fear that I'm going to actually survive it, because maybe I won't, I don't know.
And also, when has it happened to you in your life, really? How many times has it really happened? Like, in our first century life, there was a fair bit of violence in our lives around us, but in terms of when it happened to me, there was really, like, aside from the verbal violence, which was pretty much constant, the emotional, the physical violence happened to me in extreme cases, you know, probably for a couple of years of my childhood, when I was about 15, when I was about 19, and when I died. The rest of my life didn't have violence.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Uh-huh.
But a person who's in a state where they don't want to deal with the emotion, they think of violence is around every corner. You understand the difference? Like, I dealt with the violence every single time I had it, and so I didn't think it was around the corner.
Yeah, so you release the fear of
Which is
something being the future,
a
emotional thing.
yeah, that you don't want to release. So if you do not trust somebody outside of yourself on this matter, whether it's God or me, or some other person who comes along later and tells you, yep, you got to feel that emotion, unless you learn to trust them at some point, it's a truth associated to the idea or the concept of emotion that you do not wish to accept. And if you do not wish to accept it, how are you going to change it? If you don't wish to go through the emotion and accept that you have it, and you don't want to actually fully experience the emotion in a sensory, emotional and spiritual manner, like you look at your beliefs and everything, but also feel it. You're going to have to go through the emotional experience of it, and it's going to be a sensory and emotional and belief system experience where everything is confronted, and you don't want to do that.
Well, let's do it then.
Well, you say let's do it, but you don't want to do it.
Okay, well then there's change from not wanting to do it to wanting to do it.
Yeah, now what's going to cause that? What's going to cause the change from where you are now, which is I just don't want to go there. I don't believe at the moment, the feeling is, I don't believe that feeling this is going to get me anywhere on that subject. I know intellectually you think maybe it will, but that's not helping.
No.
No. So emotionally, we're going, and the feelings are, we're saying, emotion, you got to be kidding me. Any uncomfortable emotion, you got to be kidding me. That's the feeling, right? You got to, like, surely not. There must be some other way. Surely. There must be some magical solution other than having to feel my emotion. Oh, yeah, let's go and take some ayahuasca or something. People say that works, you know, or, oh, yeah, let's go and get drunk all the time because that helps me feel a bit more emotionally. Or, oh, yeah, I can enter some addiction with somebody because they always make me feel. You know, they always make me feel something and that's good for me. And none of that is going to do it because fundamentally the belief inside of myself is I can't trust anybody who tells me that I have to deal with my emotion.
And that I can.
And that I can.
You can.
This is what I mean by trusting a source of truth outside of yourself. At some point you're going to have to make a decision. And it's going to have to be a complete decision, like a belief change in you that includes your emotions, where you just have a big cries, until you come to the point where you realise you're going to have to trust somebody.
Yeah.
That had to happen to Gus.
Yeah, we think about Gus, you know, he fought against his reality, didn't he? He fought and fought and fought.
Yep.
And then he realised this isn't helping. I'm still stuck, you know. So he had to face some reality and realise that the pain was increasing, not decreasing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had some kind of opening to something outside of himself.
He desired help from someone. And he was open enough to listen to them when he got it.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, many of you are not yet open enough to listen when somebody even tries to help you. In fact, what I feel from many of you is every time you come up and talk to me about a problem and I tell you what it is, you often disagree with me and you say, no, it can't be that. You know, I'm arguing for my truth. I'm arguing for my position. I go, well, until you believe it's that, then it's not much hope for you, to be honest.
So mainly feel even the resistance to trusting God or trusting somebody.
You're going to have to trust somebody.
Yeah.
Now, the wise thing to do is to trust somebody who loves, who does things and demonstrates in their life that they do things not for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hopefully, given my life, I've demonstrated that enough to you already,
Yes.
right? But if I haven't, then it's going to have to be someone else, right? In fact, and this is God, or God, whatever you can manage. But I put to you that there's things you're going to have to learn that you can't even learn from God yet, unless you trust somebody else who's closer to God to teach you the thing.
Okay, yeah, that's really helpful. Because, yeah.
I hear over and over again, oh, we don't need Jesus, we're going to be able to progress ourselves.
I haven't found that to be true.
Sorry?
I have not found that to be true.
Yeah. Well, it's not true. You need somebody who's ahead of you, progressive-wise, in order for you to progress, right? That's the fact. Like, I needed that. The difference between myself and yourself is I was in a sincerely ignorant state, and so I could make that person God.
Yeah, and you had some trust in God. Yeah.
Yeah. I had to develop it. I had to look at all my reasoning about God, look at the world around me, about how God feels. And the attitude towards God in the first century was very undeveloped and very highly violent, to be honest. So I had to work through quite a lot of things myself in terms of determining whether those things were true, till I got to the point where I could feel, no, this God definitely exists and God's not the person that everybody around me imagines him to be. And once I got to that state of sincere ignorance, I could listen.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier having somebody to tell you how to get there
Very.
than it is doing that for yourself. Yeah. Fundamentally, and this is a fact that's been put into the Paget messages over and over again, the water will flow no higher than its source. That also applies to who you're getting the truth from. So there's time you need to have a look at the person's life and go, is their life getting better or is their life getting worse? Is their life more difficult or easier? And why is it easier? Is it because they're fitting in with everyone, or are they actually living a ethical, moral life and it's still getting easier? What is it? At some point you're going to have enough assessment of the character of the person who's come to help you to trust what they say. You understand? Now, in the case of Gus, when he went through his rage and they'd come to him and they'd sit down and go, Gus, what happened back here in your life? And they asked him questions, and they asked him questions not because they didn't already know, they already knew. They were asking him questions because he didn't remember. He had all these memories he was burying and not remembering because on an emotional level and a spiritual level in particular, he didn't want to even see them, right? So what he needed was somebody to come along and sit down with him and say, Gus, you know, back when you were on earth and you know when you were in your 20s, what did you choose to do in that period of your life? And then he gets to have some self-reflecting. Oh, I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. Talks about it a bit. Now, they didn't ask him that question because they didn't know what happened in his life. They were in the spirit world already themselves and they could easily see what happened in his life. They could also read his soul record to see what's going on in his life. They already knew. They were asking him so that he would come to know.
And he would come to integrate his physical memory with the, sensory, emotional, sexual and spiritual issues the desires that drove it and the experiences that happened concurrently with those physical things.
Yeah. Now, remember I said yesterday morning, I asked you how many of you had dealt with toilet paper issue, and I think it was like 33% or whatever. That's because the rest of you didn't trust me. You didn't trust that what I was telling you was a source of truth higher than your own. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's the fundamental reason why you didn't do anything, is because you didn't trust somebody who knows about sin enough to actually contemplate, think about it, reflect upon it, and then do something, right? We had 138 people booked into the seminar. 94 rocked up. So what's the difference between that? 44, isn't it? 44 divided by 138, what's that?
Third.
25 around, is it?
Roughly 25%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can somebody get out their mobile phone and just type it in? Because your brains are not working too good. Can you see the reliance? Our own intellectual development now reliant on a phone. Now we can't even do a math in our head, right? What is it? Exactly. 31.8%. 31.8% of the people who booked into our seminar demonstrated their insincerity before they even arrived. Last year it was higher than that here in the USA. Yep, 31% before they've even arrived to even listen to any truth.
Well, they already deemed that it wasn't worth listening to, didn't
They already deemed that. Can you see the problems we face? It's like pretty big, really. Then those of us who do arrive, the majority of us don't do what's suggested, right? They don't do, particularly their emotions, what's suggested. Why is that? Because fundamentally, when it comes to feeling our emotions, most of us are still insincere. We don't want to do it. We don't desire to do it. We don't have any inclination that it's even going to work. We even, and many of us, hope that it won't work. We hope that it won't work because that will then prove to ourselves that we don't have to do it. You understand? That's how far it goes in this untruth. And the untruth is existing not just on the intellectual level. You see, many of us believe, oh, it's just my thoughts that have to change. Not the case. Yeah? We just wait. So it's not the thoughts that have to change. There's all these areas of my memories, and all of my sin is contained within my memories that are out of harmony with love. That's where my sin began, in my memories that are out of harmony with love in the way that I've acted upon them. That's where it started. Yeah? Michael, you want to ask about that? Yeah.
So I had sex. That happened. That was a fact.
Yep.
But you're talking about integrating the other emotions that came with it. That's what we're getting the truth on.
Yeah, well, that's right. Let's say there's sex, and then there's the sensory part of sex, isn't there? The physical touch and all those senses that your soul is absorbing. Then there's the emotional reason why you had it. And that includes things like I wanted some approval, I wanted some sexual validation, I wanted to feel good as a guy, or lots of other reasons why we may want sex other than just for sex's sake.
For it to express love and affection.
Or to express love and affection. And then there's also spiritual beliefs that drive that, like a woman who loves me will want to have sex with me. A woman who, if I care for a woman, I'll want to, give her sex and whatever. And also spiritual beliefs such as I should be able to demand that from a woman who says she loves me and things like that, right? So it's not, the sexual act is not just one set of memories that are all to do with the sex itself. It's to do with all these apparatus of the soul, you could say. We refer to this apparatus in the Paget messages, don't we? We say, look, the soul has attributes and characteristics. right? And you could call them the apparatus of the soul, which enable the soul to absorb information. And you're absorbing information not just on an intellectual level in your mind, but you're absorbing it in all of these more important ways, which are all to do with your soul. So if there's error there, there's going to be error there in all of those areas, not just in one of them. So it's going to be a sort of like a complete whole person experience when you have to release the error.
And Jesus, is it correct to say then we have to, in order for this memory to leave us, to make space for reality, we must first be sincerely ignorant. We must want a source of truth.
A source of truth.
About the experience.
Yep.
And then willing to experience, say, the sex act in all of its aspects or in all of the apparatus that were engaged in the sex act. So
experience the error in every possible way.
While longing for the truth about it. So our experience plus we want to release our experience and know the truth about it.
Well, you're not going to do both at the same time because you can't absorb a truth. Remember, who of you have watched my series of videos on the soul, the human soul, and things like preclusion?
How it functions, I think, yeah.
A part of that is that if there's something in my soul that's an error, right, that I've got. Now, that error might be sensory, emotional, sexual, or spiritual, or a combination of all of them. If there's something that's a soul error, I'm not going to be able to absorb this truth until I release the error. So the release of the error is going to be me re-experiencing, going through, letting myself experience the error. Does that make sense to you? I'm going to have to experience the error in order to absorb some truth, and even to get to a point where I'm sincerely ignorant. Yeah. I'm going to have to let go of all the things that I believe are true, which are in all these different areas of my life, in order to accept the truth from an outside source. I'm going to have to go through the experience. You could call all of those things together the experience, right? This is something that most people on earth have never experienced, the release of error, and that's why hardly anybody changes.
Yeah, and can we just contrast that then with something we were speaking to Courtney about, which was how you can cry but not release error. So how do we contrast those two experiences, Jesus?
Well, the release of error is going to be a full body experience, a full mind experience, a full sensory experience, full emotional experience, and a full belief experience, all happening at the same time. You're going to be blown away by it every single time, right? If it's not that, then it's not real, right? Now, that's what most of you are scared of, that. You're frightened of that. So in answer to Michael's question, you get frightened of the full experience of error. The full experience of error, as Gus was saying to you, is so all-encompassing that you're not going to be thinking of something else while it's happening. You're not going to be wondering something else while it's happening. You won't even have a thought anymore about what's happening. You'll be in it, immersed in it. You understand? That's what's going to have to happen, and that's what most of you are petrified about happening. Because that place looks, from an external perspective, as if you're going nuts.
And an internal one sometimes.
And sometimes. Well, if you're looking at an internal perspective,
yes.
And
you're
thinking
you're
not in it yet.
Yeah.
If you think you're going nuts while you're going through it, you're not in it yet. Because when you're actually in it, you won't feel you're going nuts. You'll feel
it's true.
It's true, yeah. And it'll be a release. It'll be release. Make sense? Now, I haven't got yet, have I, to the whole idea of how the decisions that are going to have to be made for that to happen. But have I answered your question, Michael?
And I understand my soul is capable, my mind, it blows my mind, but my soul can handle it.
Correct. Your mind is just a very minor subset of its environment. It's been created through just intellectually analysing everything, right? That's everybody's mind is like that. You're using your mind to judge and analyse, reflect upon in your head. But hardly any of you have been taught in any way, even from your childhood, to do this at an emotional level. So it's going to require an expansion of your soul's shriveled up capacity. What causes the expansion of its shriveled up capacity? Water being poured on it. The soul will absorb the water. What is the water? It's the life-giving water of truth. That's the water your soul needs in order to expand its capacity. Does that make sense to you? In order for emotion to flow, you need the water of truth to expand the capacity of your soul. Just like a shriveled up, dried up apricot or something that's been in the sun for years and years and years is going to need to be soaked in water for a few days. Soaked, you could say, my soul needs to be soaked in truth for a while until I can even absorb it. Now, many of you have already begun that process, ironically, of absorbing it, but you've been very selective because you don't like the idea of this full-blown experience, right? I've talked about it with you many, many times, right? If you look at most of the videos, I spent like a solid couple of years of videos are just about the full-blown emotional experience. But everybody looks at it and goes, oh, surely not. You know, surely not. Sure, you know, God's love should be easier than that. Surely. God would have made it easier than that to get rid of my sin. Surely. You know, surely I don't have to reflect upon it or feel it or even face it or go through the experience of it. Surely there can be some magical solution. Mary, I don't like what Jesus is saying. Can you provide a more magical solution? Oh, no, you're saying the same thing, you silly girl. You know, let's ask somebody else who will tell me different. You understand? And this is what many of you do. In fact, we've talked to tens of thousands of people over the last 20 years, and the majority of them have gone on to somebody else because they don't like what I'm saying. And when I say the majority, I'm talking about the vast majority, right? We've talked to, there's probably more than 100,000 people now, at least. And in that time, how many people are now listening? In the USA alone, there'd be at least 5,000 to 10,000 people, even more than that, that have listened in the past. If they all loved the truth, we'd fill a stadium when we come here, right? But you see, most of us don't love it the way we think we do, because most of us already believe my truth is the truth. And this idiot who claims to be Jesus comes along, tells me something that's different to my truth, and he's only an idiot. He must be, because it doesn't agree with my truth. Right? And this is why I say earlier how you've got to come to trust some source that's higher than your own in order to assess whether something's true or not. And of course the major source, the only real infinite source of that truth is God, but for many of us we're hardly able to even, with our soul is so shriveled up in the development of its own senses that we're so shriveled up and we're incapable of even feeling an emotion from God, which is the main way that God communicates all of his love to us, right? And so now somebody's going to have to come along and teach you how to feel an emotion. Someone's going to have to come along and tell you that it's good for you. Somebody's going to have to come along and say, no, you know, all those things you want to do, all those external things you would like to do in order to feel your feelings, well, none of them are going to work. You need to do this one thing that God designed you to do for your own good, actually, so that you could feel other things too eventually. So you can feel love and acceptance and joy and all these other emotions can only come to you once the soul's in an unshriveled state. And to get into an unshriveled state, the only thing that's going to get you there is the life-giving water of truth. So it really comes down to this. Am I going to hold on to my own truth, or am I going to realise at some point that all the things I feel and believe about myself, and all the things I feel and believe about others, and all the things I feel and believe about society and the environment and all these other things, even life on earth as it currently exists, are probably in error? Can you see, in a way, that's humble, isn't it? And for me, it's not hard to be humble because God's infinite, and I know I'm finite. I'm made aware of that every day, how finite I am. I have a finite amount of energy, a finite amount of thought, finite amount of feelings, a finite amount of sexual desires, a finite amount of sensory input that I can handle. And then beyond that, I can't, and I'm finite. So it makes sense to me to realise that, I'm finite, God's infinite. It makes sense to me that probably everything I think I know, probably every truth that I think is real, is probably needs some kind of embellishment from God.
Refinement.
Refinement from God, right? And that is reality. A person who's humble reaches that position and remains in that position for the rest of their existence, where they're always learning, always seeking. Can you see, if I enter the state here of sincere ignorance, yes, can you see the next step is having a desire to learn like a child would have a desire to learn, like a child would, question everything. Mary knows me well enough to know that I question everything. And then truthful education, you can see some truthful education only because you're in that childlike state of wanting it, desiring it. So you could say, when it comes to decisions, the very first decision is going to have to be whose truth? Mine or God's? Am I going to continue relying on my own experience, my own memories, my own soul condition, my own desires and passions to grow, or am I going to start allowing somebody else to share some truth with me? And who is that somebody else going to be? Is it going to be God, or someone aligned with God, or is it going to be, who knows? It just has to be somebody who's in a stronger condition of truth than I am, who sees a different reality to what I see. If you only listen to the things you already believe are true, you will never grow from where you currently are. That's a fact. Right? Nothing will change. That's a fact. So you're going to have to get out of the condition to be sincere, to enter a state of sincerity with God. You're going to have to get out of the condition where you only accept what is logical to you. And now most people, when they contemplate that, they enter major degrees of panic.
Yeah.
Because they're going, well, what? You're asking me to trust someone outside of myself? Like, how can that be? New Age philosophy says you've got to learn to trust yourself. Doesn't it? That's the major flaw of New Age, of New Age thinking. You've got to learn to trust yourself.
The truth's already inside of you.
The truth's already inside of you. All you need to do is discover it. Remember it, as they say. Yeah, remember it. All you need to do, your soul already has it all. And all you really need to do is just remember that your soul has it and what that is.
And you're already perfect.
How many of you tried that? And did it work? No. It doesn't work. And this is the thing, is that it can't work, because for the only way for you to get into a condition above yourself is to listen to a source of truth that's outside of yourself, that is higher than you yourself are, right? That's the only way it can happen. There's no other way. So, microphone down here for a second. No, this microphone could come.
Is it Margaret or?
Yeah, Mark, sorry. Yep.
So, now by the time I got the mic, I forgot. Oh my goodness. Discernment. So I totally, obviously agree with what you're saying, but then my question to you is, okay, how do I discern who's in a higher state than me of the truth, not just their truth?
Yeah.
God's truth.
Can I just point out to you already?
Okay.
You said, I hear what you're saying.
I obviously totally agree.
I totally agree.
Okay, here we go.
But what's that? That's my argument.
Okay.
Right, so what's your argument?
Well, I didn't think I was arguing. I thought
Well, you
I
are,
was making a
but go
sincere
on.
question. No, I'm not. Okay.
I like a good argument. Go on.
Okay. My argument was, how do I discern who...
Yeah. Now,
So how do I discern who's in a higher state of truth than I to learn from?
correct.
That's my question.
But that's not the real question.
Oh, it's not?
No, the real question is you're scared about trusting anybody.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
this question says, don't trust anybody because I don't know who to trust. So it would be better for you to feel you don't know who to trust.
Well, I definitely know I have issues around trust.
Of course you have issues around it, otherwise you would not have asked the question. But
So I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
no, you are disagreeing.
Oh, I am? Oh, okay.
Because you do not
I'm
want
making
to...
a fool of myself at the
No,
same
you
time.
don't want to trust somebody. Emotionally, you don't want to trust somebody, so you need to feel that.
Okay.
You understand? That's the truth
you.
of your condition. The truth is you don't want to trust Jesus or anybody else. The truth is, I've had a set of memories that say don't trust anybody. Only trust myself. And I'm going to put to you, has that worked out real good? No. Okay. So,
yeah.
go on.
Well, it's just so important to measure that. You know, I see, and even in my own life experience, where I've lived in a set of memories which become really a set of beliefs, and then I never measure the outcome. I never measure, I never trusted anyone. I never trust anyone. I always self-protect. How happy am I? How lonely am I? How much am I developing? You know, we don't ever measure. It's so rare for a person to measure the product of their beliefs.
But it's also interesting to see that it's an emotion. You're actually asking a question, and this is what happens to the majority of you with your questions. You're asking a question which is really a statement of your emotional condition.
Well, I actually was going to say before that question, if I have a block to trusting others or trusting anyone...
I'm sorry, you do not have a block
I
to
don't have a
trusting
block.
No, you have a willful desire to not
trust.
trust others. That's not a block.
Okay.
Remember yesterday...
It's not something out of your control.
But why do I have a willful desire to not trust others?
Well, that's what you got to feel.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe.
Because you had pain that you don't want to feel in your past when you did trust somebody, and you don't want to go through that pain.
Yeah.
No, you haven't gone through the pain of who to trust. Because you still don't trust me, and you still don't trust anybody else. And in fact, you're asking the question, and you're really saying, but I don't want to trust anybody, is really what you're saying. Yeah. Can you feel...
No, you're right.
Well, but you're angry now, see?
Am I?
Yeah.
Well, now you're just trying to protect another
Now put
feeling.
the mic back.
Yeah.
You're angry. So
So
you're
sorry.
angry. Yeah, you're shutting down. This is what people who are angry do. They either run away from the conversation, or they get into a state where, oh yes, I can see what you're right. You're probably right, but I don't want to know you're right. is really the feeling, right? And so this is,
I'm denying the feelings.
and I'm not
what's
making
happening.
fun of you here. I'm
No, I know you're not.
using you as an illustration to say this is what all of you are going to do with every single thing you raise. You're going to go, I'm saying you're going to have to trust some source of truth outside of yourself. And you go, there is no one to trust. How do I determine who to trust? You know, you don't trust me, obviously, because you're not doing what I suggest, because you're not, even though you think you are, you're not. So you don't trust me. Don't trust God yet, because obviously you don't know whether what I'm suggesting is what God would also suggest, right? So who do you now trust? And why do you have that feeling is because in your childhood something happened which destroyed your trust in anyone other than yourself. You come to be self-reliant and only trust yourself. And that's a feeling. And what I'm suggesting to you is you're not going to get out of this state until you feel the emotion where you don't want to trust anybody.
Yeah, and can I say even further though, Jay, you're not going to get out, you're not even going to feel that emotion until you get out. Remember yesterday we put on the other side of the board desired arrogance, desired ignorance, desired mistrust. It's actually not just a block or just an emotion you're holding now, it's a desire.
It's not
inside
something
of
you don't have control over, which is when you do use the term block, you have the tendency to believe, I don't have control over it. It's something that's going on without my knowledge, without my understanding. No, it's not. It's a purposeful desire to not trust anybody, and it's driven by an emotion that comes from childhood where you don't want to feel that emotion and work through it as an error and realise that you're going to have to trust somebody sometime and just have a big cry about it.
Yeah.
That you're going to have to trust somebody sometime.
Yeah. And
Right?
when you're in this desired mistrust, you're saying, I'm never feeling that, I desire mistrust.
Yeah.
And
And we
until
always
you-
come up with the word but. I've been on Mary's case about but.
Remember last
for
year in
years.
San Diego? But, Jesus, but, yeah.
Every time Mary says but, I say, what? Is it but or and? What is it?
Sometimes my
Right.
buts are ands, but anyway.
And a lot of times the but means I've got an argument. I've got a valid thought. I've got a valid feeling here that seems to be the opposite of what you're suggesting.
And I want to hold on to
And
it.
I want to hold on to it. Yep. There's my argument. Now, in this argument, I'm really saying, but my truth is I can't trust anybody. Surely that's the truth. Jesus, tell me that's the truth. And I'm going, no, that's not the truth. There's a lot of people you can trust. In fact, you trust people every day of your life. You trust the man who made your car. You trust the guy who serviced it. You've trusted people, but you just don't want to trust emotionally, an emotional process. Right? There's many people you trust, even though you think you don't. But when it comes to different emotions or a man, working with a man on an emotional level, now I can understand why there would be no trust. Does that make sense? So the key is to go, okay, here I am. I'm upset about the fact that I'm being told I've got to trust somebody. And then go deeper than that and go, why am I upset? Let myself feel. The easiest way to find out why is to let myself feel I am upset.
Yep.
About that I'm going to have to trust somebody. And it's really hard. And I don't know how. And I don't know who. And I don't know what to trust. And I don't know, whether they're right or wrong yet. Any of those things. And, you can go through that emotionally, have a big cry about it. And afterwards you'll feel much more relaxed. And then you'll start looking more logically. And you'll be able to go, oh, maybe there are some people that I already do trust actually in my life. Just not with my feelings.
Yeah.
Many of you don't trust anybody with your feelings. You trust them in other areas, but not with your feelings. And not with your beliefs either. Yep. Yeah. Okay? Make sense? Very important to understand. The argument, the but, is the argument, and that's the argument to stay in the... See, really, I need to change this, don't I? I need to go rub that out. There it is. I need to rub this out now and put this in the place of this, don't I, really? And I need to say, I need to trust that someone can help me out of my error. But it's going to be a real visceral, emotional process because I am so dedicated to my error.
And, you know, at times it feels I'm panicking because what I think is reality is being challenged. Just by even Jesus saying you have to trust somebody in a more loving state than yourself, for most of you, that challenges all of your memories, and you feel like my reality is being challenged. My reality is I can't trust anybody.
I've never been able to trust my whole life. Everybody I tried to trust in the past has disappointed me.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Hurt me, abandoned me, disappointed me, exploited me.
I trusted my husband, he left me. Trusted my kids, they don't talk to me anymore. Trusted my parents, you know, they died. No one to rely upon there anymore either. Like, they died and left me. You know, I trusted them to look after me my whole life, but half of my life now and they're gone. They can't even look after me anymore. You know, so after that, we start convincing ourselves that our reality, the memory of our reality is true. And then, once we've convinced ourselves that the memory of it is true, now we're going to fight for it. Because you only fight for the things that you feel are true. If you knew it to be an error, you wouldn't fight for it. So you fight for the things you believe are true, even though they're errors. There's another Paget message that talks about the battle between truth and error is going to have to happen inside your soul. And this is what it feels like. This is why it's torturous.
Yeah.
You know, because your soul is screaming, going, no, 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 no. And the truth you're receiving is saying, yes, 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 this will be good for you. And the soul is screaming. And so somehow you're going to have to make the change where you go through the screaming, which is what Gus did initially. Remember, he went through 6 months of rage about having to accept some truths, to the point we could get somewhere where he could bring himself to trust one other person helping him. Wasn't even God yet, right? To get to the point where he could trust that these people were helping him enough that if he followed their advice, that then things could happen. That make sense to everyone? Yep. And your mind is going to be screaming at you because the mind only serves your memories. It's only serving, oh, this happened to me, so I want validation that this happened to me. I want acceptance that this happened to me. I want approval for what I've now imbibed inside of my soul to be true. I want to hear from Jesus that, yes, I have just reason to not trust anybody. I want to hear from him, I have just reason to not feel my emotion. I want to hear from him that there's no reason why I should have to go through a hard experience. I want him to tell me he's meant to be my saviour, goddammit. He should even save me from the lot of it, actually. Surely the whole Christian, you can see how the Christian idea of blood saving me from doing this came about, because everybody says, I want somebody to come along and say to me, you don't have to do it. It's going to be magically waved away from you by somebody else. Yep. Very important to understand. If I meet you next year and all of you are in a rage, that would be an improvement. You understand?
We might have 5 people in the audience because everyone's taking their year off
Still in
for
their rage.
Yes, yeah.
But hopefully you got over your rage in 12 months. Who knows? Well, it's looking like it might be 8 months before you come again. So hopefully you got 8 months. Because I don't want a whole audience in rage, because they're not going to listen to anything. But at least they are in a further point of development where they're feeling how much they don't want to. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're going to have to go through the feeling. The key is to not judge it, the key is not to condemn it, and the key is to not disengage from the feeling. See, what most people do when they get angry, they don't do what
Samuel did.
They go into this state of tantrum, which is still not where Samuel was, where Gus was, when he got to the state where he was willing to listen. Right? What happens with most people on earth is they say, but I want what I want and that's it, I'm F this, F that, I'm not doing that. So that's them living in the rage but never going through it. You've got to learn how to go through it and get to the other side of it where you go, okay, bring it on. Bring the life-giving water of truth on. That makes sense? You've got to get to that point. Once you're in that state, you could now say, looking at this diagram here, you can now see, once I'm in that state of bring on the truth, now I am in sincere ignorance where I have an opening to learning.
Yeah.
So many of you have come to divine truth in an intellectual way. It appeals to your logic, which actually is in your mind. But emotionally, you think it's highly illogical because it's going to ask things of you emotionally that are going to cause you to have to experience pain. And your entire world existence here in the States in particular, and it's the case in every Western country, is to avoid pain at every cost, at any cost. At any cost, avoid it. Even to the cost of me getting fat and dying from me eating too much to suppress my pain, even at the cost of me having heart disease and cancers and everything else. I'm okay with all that as long as I can avoid pain. I get the cancer and I'm dying from it and it's extremely painful, so let's make the pain go away with even more ways of suppressing the pain. That's the attitude everybody has, right? Let's avoid pain at any cost. And I'm saying to you, that's not the attitude Gus had. Is it? He had the attitude, now I know I'm going to have it. So if we look at the decisions, again, I've lost my rubber. Look at the decisions he made, right? He had to make the decision, firstly, am I going to allow the experience of pain? Not just the acknowledgement of it, not just the, yes, I know I've got some, none of that. The actual go through, the actual experience. Am I going to allow it? He had to make that decision. The answer for him by that stage, because he developed 80 years it took him to develop sincerity on that one issue. Right? Once he got to that sincerity on that one issue, his answer was, yes, I am going to. And then the next question he had was, how long do I want it to take? If you listened to him properly this morning, you would have realised, even in the fourth sphere, or the third sphere, about to enter the fourth sphere of the spirit world, he was spending 1/3 of his life dealing with his pain. By the fourth sphere. How much of his life do you think he was dealing with in the first sphere?
With his pain.
With his pain. It was 100% of his life. He still had to eat, of course, in the sense of smell food and look for scraps. He still had to get some water, go down, the miles and miles of road to get his bucket of water to drink for the day, the bucket of murky water. He still had to do all of that. But the rest of the time, he focused on dealing with his pain. And did it take him long to get out of the state he was in his ruins? No. He only had to endure that for a short period of time because he was prepared to begin feeling his pain in a more complete manner. Does that make sense? Now, you can ask him these questions tomorrow about that process, right? What caused him to choose the experience of pain? What have I said the answer's going to be? Truth. Getting truth from an external source.
That's really the first question he asked, actually.
Yeah, this is just
Is
his
my truth
questions
reality?
about pain here,
Yeah.
right? His questions about pain were that. Ironically, the questions about truth are almost the same. Am I going to allow truth from an external source? Yes or no? How fast am I going to allow truth from an external source? Slow or fast? Do I want it dribbled to me? You know, watch a video occasionally about truth and then ignore the rest, or whatever it is? Or do I want to embrace it as a whole life experience? That's going to determine how fast. That makes sense to you? Time.
Yeah, it's 4 p.m.
Now, I haven't really gotten, unfortunately, to share with you all the things I wanted to share, but tomorrow's questions that you have for Gus.
Well, I think Gus, I don't know about that, but I think he's pretty keen on you finishing what you want to share. I think he feels like he got to cover...
I think it will provide an opening to this rest of the discussion.
Sure.
Is what I'm thinking. Gus wants to talk to you about your attitude to violence. And this is an area where most people are very, very resistant, and they think they know the truth about it, right? And what I would like to do tomorrow is for Gus to have that conversation with you about violence and your attitude to it. And then we examine the attitude to violence as to how it's going to have to be dealt with. Does that make sense? In a practical way, so you get some ideas or experience about this is what it's going to be like for me, having to go through these things and how it felt. And we've got to also ask Gus, how did it feel for you? You know, like, is it like an occasional thing that you decided to feel about, or did you fight? How much did you fight for your position once you had an acceptance? You see, most of us believe we're listening to divine truth while we're still fighting. While all the buts are still going on, you know, like, but this and but that, no, but, right? Most of us believe we're still listening. We're not. And you've got to learn that every little piece of resistance you have to truth is not a place of sincere ignorance. And there's going to be something you're going to have to feel to get to that place. Yeah? How are you guys going? Stunned, yeah. It's and this is good in a way, right? Like, one of the things Mary and I wanted to do on this trip is to bring some reality to all the audiences. You know, this is the real condition, and this is the real problem. This is the reason why people are not growing and changing very rapidly, because we're not in the condition yet where we can pray and actually be sincere. Yeah? And so we need to learn what sincere longing really means. And so even if we spend the rest of this time and then other times when we're back home and next time we visit talking about developing a sincere longing, by the time we're done with that, hopefully you know what one feels like, because you've examined your sin. Remember, the only time Gus got to feel, for the very first time he got to feel what a sincere longing was like, was when he had a sincere longing to deal with the violence he perpetrated towards his Mexican brother. That was the very first time that he ever had a sincere longing. That took him 160 years to achieve of his life. And I'm suggesting to you, please don't take that long. Right?
That's why he was so excited this morning, because there's the opportunity to not take that long.
Yeah. You're hearing truths that are going to affect the rest of your existence. Please don't ignore them. Right? Please don't just go, oh, that's just Jesus' opinion. And anyway, he's not Jesus anyway, really. You know, he says all this stuff and some of it's really good, but there's a lot that he says, man, it's so hard to take and it must be wrong, you know? And as soon as you do this, you start denying the truth that a person has, right? And then what do you do with that? You go, oh, I don't need to listen to it. I don't need to change my perspective. Every time you're presented with a truth, it will be a challenge for you. It will be a challenge for you.
It's challenging your reality. Really.
It's going to challenge your reality. If you're not finding it challenging, you're in complete denial that you've accepted it. Does that make sense? It will be challenging. Every single truth, because there are just so many things that we have inside of us that are error when we're in a condition of sin, that there's going to have to be challenge in order for change to occur. Now, I'm prepared to challenge you. Are you prepared to come along on the road with me? Right? Now, fortunately, I have the bravery to challenge you, to get up in front of audiences of hundreds of people and be condemned the entire time. Right? And if I didn't have the development I had, I'd be yelling at you. Right? Or ripping your money off and spending it on something myself. Right? You guys donated nearly $10,000 yesterday, and Mary and I have already allocated it to coming back, not to our life. You know, makes sense? Have some trust. Have some trust that somebody loves you and wants to help your life and not harm it, right? Now, there's plenty of people out there who want to harm it. I understand that. There's plenty of people, reasons to not trust people. I get all that. But at the end of the day, if you go through the emotions, you will know who to trust and who not to. Yeah. You will.
Yeah. It's our insistence to not go through the emotions that puts us in the predicament that we then keep justifying as reality.
And the irony is you end up trusting the very people you shouldn't.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because of that. That's the irony. You end up in the attraction is going to cause, you know, the way the soul is built is that it attracts the events that triggers your emotions. So if your emotion is, I don't trust anybody, what's got to happen? What's got to happen according to the law is that a lot of people will come into your life who you can't trust. So eventually you will go through the emotion that there's nobody to trust. That's going to happen. That's the irony of these feelings, is the more you resist them, the more the attraction is going to happen in order to trigger the event anyway.
The experience.
So you go through the experience in the end. Right? God's got you well under control. Even though
we're fighting it.
We're fighting it. Yeah, he knows what's best and his laws are built around that. So we'd just like to encourage you tonight to start contemplating your sins. And particularly the sin of not wanting to deal with your sins. You get what I mean by that? Like, how do you want to deal with your sins? What do you want to feel about whether you want to go through the pain of your sins and actually go through them, or what else you would like to happen instead of that? Yeah. What would you prefer? Do you understand? Because in what you prefer will be many of your sins. You follow? So if you can look at that tonight, and we might discuss a bit of that tomorrow in amongst the discussion we have with regard to what Gus talked about and also the continuation of this, how to receive truth that's outside of yourself. Make sense? Excellent. Now, is there anything about unrelated matters that you'd like to... Logistics or
yes.
whatever?
Well, just the last question, the last thing.
The homework?
Oh, the homework. So we're looking at, what we're trying to do is examine the sin of our resistance, right? So the resistance begins where you don't want to feel pain. That's where most of your sin begins. So what would you prefer other than feeling pain?
Or what do you do?
What do you do other than feeling pain? Now remember, the pain is in those 5 areas. So physically, what do you do to avoid your sensory pain, your physical pain, your body pains? What do you do to avoid them? Right? So if we look at this, what do I do to avoid my physical and sensory pain? You know, each of you have aches and pains in your body that you're not letting yourself feel. You have aches and pains in your, in your physical senses, in lots of different areas, and you choose to do things to avoid them. What do you choose to do? Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to your emotional pain, what do you choose to do rather than having it? What are the things you choose, the decisions you've made to not feel certain emotions? What do you do to suppress them? What do you do to run away from them? What do you do to avoid them? Do you get angry about them? What do you expect others and blame others because they aren't helping you with them? What do you expect? And then when it comes to your sexual pain, what have you done in your life to avoid it? Are you now avoiding relationships completely because that's the way to avoid your sexual pain? What about the sexual pain you have with regard to what you expect versus what you desire from others versus what you want from them? What are you doing to avoid all of those transactions that you've made sexually in the past? And also to avoid the recognition of your immoral sexual history. Mm-hmm. What are you doing there to avoid all that? And when it comes to spiritual, what do you do to avoid beliefs? What do you do to not think about, belief systems? Why?
And to avoid the challenge of my beliefs.
Yeah, what do I do? What do I do in my life to engage the process of avoidance of truth in all of these areas? Does that make sense to you now? That's what we're hoping you'll do. Now, we're not going to reward you for doing it.
Come with our stars tomorrow and check your work and give you a star.
We're not going to mark you, We're not going to give you the sense, I've achieved that now. Isn't that great?
It's a process.
It's a process.
This is a process.
That you're going to have to learn to love for yourself, for your own sake. The reward is doing it for your own sake. Because remember, it's all about exposing to yourself your sins so that you know what to repent for. When you come to God, the very first thing you're going to have to come to God with is an awakening to the sin. Remember, it says that in the message we read yesterday morning. This is what it means to examine the sin. And there is going to have to be other things other than God's love that help you deal with your sin and come to an awakening of it. And that's on you. That's the process you need to do. So this is the beginning of that process. Be honest with yourself. What do I do to avoid my stuff? What are the actions I take? Because those actions will be many of your sins. Many of your sins will be the actions you take to avoid the pain in your life. Right? So many of you think being single is not a sin. Right? But it is. God designed you to be with the other half of your soul. So being single is a sin. What do you do about that? Why don't you want that? Why don't you desire that? That is the reality of your creation. What God created is the only real thing. So why do you desire that? Why do you desire to live an alone life in the integration with others, in the way you interact? Why is it that you hardly give a gift to another person your entire life, other than at Christmas and at Easter or their birthdays? Why is that? Why do these things happen? These are all expressions, the outward expressions of the internal sins. Does that make sense? The person who lives in harmony with love wants to give gifts all the time. They don't expect anything in return. Why do you work for money? Remember I said your reality is going to be challenged on every level. The whole idea of money is going to be challenged. right? The whole idea of economics, the whole idea of you having wealth, the whole idea of you owning something, all of it's going to get challenged because they're all out of harmony with love. In the spirit world, do you think you're going to go, oh, I'm going to go put down a payment on my home? From a money perspective, there's no money in the spirit world. What are you going to do? I'm saying in the hells there is, of course, because that's the kind of environment that we have here, exactly the same as there. There's plenty of people who want to create bartering systems in the spirit world, in the first sphere of the spirit world, but above the first sphere, they don't exist. Right? So you're never going to get to the second sphere while you believe these things. You're never going to get beyond where you currently are. That's the point. And it's not my responsibility to challenge you. I've decided that I love you enough to challenge you, but I'm not responsible for challenging you. Nobody is. God isn't. None of God's creatures are either. No celestial spirit or other spirit has to help you. You're in your own sin. You're by yourself on it. Now you can ask for help and receive it, but it is your sin and you're the one having to deal with it. You follow? And so the best way to do that is to learn how to actually engage the process with a desire. I want to see, I want to notice it, I want to see what's going on in my life, I want to see what I do, I want to see when I avoid pain, I want to see what actions I take. That makes sense? Let yourself go there. And even if you can do this on just a blank slate, here's what I do, what sin might be there behind that. Here's what I do, what sins might be driving that. Even that would be better than not looking at it at all. Can you see? Yeah. Yes? If we just have the mic there. Just microphone. It's right next to you.
So the definition of sin is being out of harmony with love, because I have not heard that talk.
Yeah. Being out of harmony with God's love, to be more specific.
With God's love.
That's right.
Okay.
Missing the mark.
Missing the mark of God's love.
Yeah.
That's the definition of sin. So where do I miss the mark of love in my life?
Right. And I'm so grateful that you picked someone from Texas because I spent my college years there. Yeah. When he even said that he was from there and that he was in politics in Texas, I was like, oh man, arrogant. I judged him right away. Yeah, that's right. And I said, whoa, what am I doing? Yeah, that's I'm judging this person, I don't know. Yeah, that's right. And he's actually in quite a loving condition, right? Yeah. Yeah.
He's a nice fellow.
Now, who is running that system over there? Sorry, that was Jason, is it? Yeah. Jason, it's ringing all the time. I can hear it ringing. So tomorrow it's going to have to go, or it's going to have to go further back or something. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time today, guys. We'll see you again tomorrow. Yeah.